Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to today's episode, Success and Significance Podcast. I am excited for you to hear from our next guest, Michael Brueseke. He is the senior pastor of a live church, and he is making moves to make an impact for the areas that he's called to love and serve. This guy is not only a senior pastor, he is a visionary, he is a leader, he is one of my best friends, mentors, pastor, and I am excited for you to hear some of the nuggets from Michael Brueseke today on how to marry the mission and not your model. Hey, welcome back, everyone. This is your host, Eric Newman, with the Success and Significance Podcast. I am super excited to have one of my best friends, mentor, brother, you keep naming it. I have Michael Brueseke, also known as Pastor Michael Brueseke, here with us today. I'm excited for you all to hear from him. We got a lot of cool stuff to talk about. So, Michael, thank you so much for being here, man.
It's awesome to be here. And, as we were talking just a little bit before we started the recording, it's cool when you watch things you plan come to be and love what you're doing and your voice getting out there and the impact you're having and conversations we had in the past about being together in these moments. It's just great to be here and to have this conversation today.
Yeah, I think we've talked about it a couple times. Like, we should just have a podcast just with us at all times. So we got a lot of cool ideas.
Just talking.
Yeah, just talking, because that's what we do. But I appreciate you being here, man. You have been an influence for me, even sitting here with the growth of Rock Solid Foundation. You and your bride, Megan, have been a huge influence on me. So thank you. So if you've listened to some of the last couple of episodes, you'll notice a theme to where one of the themes that we were talking about is marry the mission and not the model. And so who better to have with me than to kind of explain that? We've talked about it for many and many years. So before we dive into the actual topic, just tell the audience a little bit about you, who you are, and what do you do for this amazing thing called life.
Yeah, I'm Michael, as Eric said. I've been married to my incredible wife, Megan, for 20 years, celebrating 20 years this year. I've got 5 kids. My youngest is 8.
You really love your wife.
I really love my wife. And 5 kids, youngest is 8. And we'll just stop there because this is a PG podcast.
That is
and
very
then my
PG.
oldest is 17. And, I think parenting is, honestly, I think it's the hardest thing I do. It's also the most rewarding thing I do. And in my spare time, I pastor a church. That's a joke.
He does.
It's
he
not
is
spare
full-time. He is full-time.
A live church, multi-state church. So we've got 2 locations in Southeast Virginia, 1 location in St. Louis, Missouri. We've got a pretty big international work in the Philippines. We do some stuff in a prison ministry that we're doing there. A lot of outreach, Dream Center, also in Hampton Roads. And so just a lot of things happening. Our church owns a coffee shop in the community that also gives back to the nonprofit, that gives it to nonprofits. Rock Solid Foundation, definitely every year a part of that. So really just trying to do my part, right, to have impact. And so I don't like to use, I don't want to get churchy, use Christianese words or anything, but just, I do know I've been blessed in my life. And so I don't want to just throw that away. I want to make sure that I use it to have the impact and make a difference. And so that's my life in a very, very fast,
It was very condensed
version. But yeah, wife, 5 kids. And just to throw it in there, since I'm on the podcast, I just would encourage everybody, work on your marriage. I think every year is a massive celebration. Been married 1 year, awesome. Keep it going. Get to 2. And every year you work on your marriage and stay united is always worth it. And so
I think that even goes to the theme of the podcast too, success and significance. So very successful in what you do. You have a great team around you, building the team up, but also the significance piece behind it is true. Like the marriage, the people that will be there once you do retire a long time from now, from being senior pastor, the significance of the impact that you're making now, but also having Megan, your kids, grandkids with you in the future. Like that's a huge part of what we're trying to get across. So this is a guy of definition of success and significance. So with that, you took over the church 14 years ago?
Yeah. So in 2011, I moved from St. Louis, January 1st, 2011. I rolled into Chesapeake, Virginia.
I remember he had bedazzled jeans on. It was great.
They were incredible. I went through an old bin and I didn't have those jeans anymore. I'm telling you,
They were bedazzled,
those
but that's all right.
revival bedazzled jeans are going to be so back in style one day. Is this what you want to talk about on the podcast?
Sorry.
I just want to have clarity.
Sorry.
So I rolled into town, and then we did a 3-year transition from the founding pastor. His name was Jim Wall, just a great man of God. And in January 2014. Just 2 weeks, maybe 1 week before my 4th child, Soren, was born, my wife and I became the senior pastors. And so over the last 10 years, we've started campus in Suffolk. We went through a name change of the church, a rebranding exercise, and merged with the church in St. Louis based on where we were from and some relationship that was there, and ended up trying this multi-state thing. And yeah, 10 plus years. So it's a big year. 2024 for me is like 20 years of marriage, 10 years of leading a live church, and rocking it.
Yeah, so with that, so you just mentioned it, the name change. So Marry the Mission, Not the Model. Talk to me a little bit of how you've seen the church in America evolve, but also how has a live church adapted and stayed true to its mission, even though that the model, like from the different times of services and different types of music played. How have you kind of navigated that road of Marry the Mission, Not the Model?
I think that in my world, most churches die. So most churches run a life cycle and then they die. And that's the reason any community people are watching this. It's true for us sitting in Hampton Roads right now, but it's true for most cities. You can drive through different neighborhoods and different areas of town, and you'll see churches that are 70, 80, 90 years old, kind of dilapidated, or maybe if they are having service, there's 20 people there on a Sunday. What happened? Well, they had something really good. They loved it, and they kept living for their preference of what they love.
Oh, that's good.
One of the things I always teach our team, one of the things I try to lead by example on, is the best leaders die to their preferences every single day. So I have like my desires. I have what I believe is right, but I have to run it through a filter of what's Michael's preference versus what's actually needed today. Because, I mean, for us, again, we're a church, but the music, for instance, and my kids sometimes will be like, I don't like this song, or I do like this song. And I'm like, I don't like any of the songs we did Sunday.
Right.
I don't pick out the songs for me. You know what I mean? If it's at the end of the day and I'm like, this is what I want to do, well, that might not be what's needed in 2024.
Right.
So I have to understand where is the actual culture for what we're trying to reach. Since COVID in 2020, you look at the emotional wear and tear that's happened to the world, and we're in a different place. We know this just as leaders, but pastoring is a totally different world in 2024 than it was in 2019.
What's the biggest difference?
The amount of mental anguish mental anguish and you know this because you're part of our church, I talk about it, the realization of the massive fear of death that's in culture that came to the surface because of COVID. So every single weekend, I'm trying to lead people that I know in the back of their mind, like there is an underlying tinge of fear that was exposed in 2020. So when you're a leader now, that fear hadn't come to the surface across the board. Now it's at the surface.
Right.
And so when we think about what does that mean for leadership, I believe that there's a way to actually overcome that. I believe there's a way to actually help lead people into a better future, but we didn't have to focus on it so much 4 years ago.
It was
like
exposed
we do now.
The exposed rate is a lot higher now.
Right. And so that's part of big picture. I don't know what 5 years looks like, right? 5 years might be a completely new thing that happens. So it's seeing what happens in culture.
Well, how do you keep that mentality though? So what's your indicators? Are you keeping a tab on culture? Like, what are some of your indicators knowing that it's changing? Like through prayer, petition, like how do you know?
So if I look at a couple things, I'll make, and the obvious one is as a Christian, so it's seeking God.
Right.
And it's what is he saying? I believe that God's word is life. I believe it's helpful for our life today. I don't believe it's just an ancient book that you could read for some history. I believe it's helpful. Prayer, huge. What is God saying? I believe that he will show us things. He can, the way I would say it, speak to our heart. I don't hear an audible voice, but I believe that there's direction you can know is the way God's leading you. Certainly those are the two most important things. But I think as a leader, just as I would be as a business leader, just as I would be as a nonprofit leader, there's indicators I'm thinking about. What's happening in the economy? Right. That's what's wearing on people. What's happening in the political world? You know, even right now, as we're talking about this, right? Politics heavy in the world that we live in. What's going on relationally in people? You know, how is the divorce rates going up or down? What's happening in young people in culture? So these are all the indicators that I'm looking at when I think about where is our church and what do we need? Because our church needs to look like the community we're in.
That's good.
Like, I'm not trying to build, again, I want something that's going to last.
Right.
Somebody said something to me a long time ago. Do you want your name on it or do you want your fingerprints on it? I'm trying to build a church that doesn't, it's not Michael's church, but when I'm gone, I want to know that my fingerprints, like I made a difference that's going to way outlast me. That means I'm going to have to build a culture that says, hey, what's happening and what's God speaking into this moment to keep it going? And we might talk about this, but not everybody's going to like that.
Well, that's the indicator. So with you keeping tabs on that, and then, so what it sounds, and when speaking in like business or your customer in mind, right?
Yeah.
So your audience, the people that call the church, a live church, their home, that's your primary focus. And what I hear you saying is that sometimes like what's better for them may not be better for Michael, but you have to do that because you're dedicated to the mission of the church. And I think from that side of it is it's not always easy. So how do you navigate when you know that you have a decision to make that's going to make some people upset?
Yes, great. So I'm gonna answer that, I think. So if I don't answer it the way you want me to,
I'll bring it back.
Because I wanted to say one of the things I realized in 2020, I went to our church in what I think was probably my most vulnerable maybe moment as a senior pastor. So we talked just real things. Our church had grown incredibly fast in the first 6 years of my of getting to be the leader.
Right.
Recognized as one of the fastest growing churches. Like, people are coming to the church. Income was good. People are being saved. We're able to do things. All these things are great. COVID hit, and I had this, like, just to be blunt, kind of a disgusted feeling in my stomach. I'm like, I don't think I'm actually, as a senior pastor, making disciples the way that I'm supposed to. So as a Christian, the Bible says you're supposed to make disciples,
right?
Which would mean when a disaster happens, pandemic happens, you could stand strong and you wouldn't freak out. And I watched our church respond, and I'm like, we have to change something. So I went to our church and said, I'm sorry. I don't think I have led us in the way to make disciples that we need to make disciples. And so there was a pretty big change in the way I led in 2020. So I talked about the indicator of what was happening in culture.
Right.
But I started to lead very different. And I talked a bit more in depth. I would say my teaching got, when I say in depth, maybe a little bit, you have to read your Bible to know some of it.
Right.
We tackled topics that are really hard. We tackle identity topics. We tackle political topics. We'll tackle any topic. What does God actually say? And I've watched a lot of people have, while a lot of people have come to the church and our church is very healthy and growing, I've watched people leave the church because they don't like it. Mm. They want stuff people feel very comfortable when things are at the surface, but when things stay at the surface, change can't happen.
Right.
That's true in a church. That's true in a nonprofit. That's true in a for-profit business. So we made a decision. We're not going to stay at the surface ever. We're going to cut to the heart. That decision meant that we had to start some things that we hadn't started. That decision meant that we had to stop the way that we did some things as a church. And it's a lot harder and a lot messier to get to the heart of it.
Right.
And, people don't like it.
Yeah, change. I've heard it said many of different ways, but no one loves change, but people love what change brings. But change in the middle is extremely messy.
Yeah.
So like there's prayer, knowing that you're supposed to move in that direction, and then you've made the decision to make the change. So even for a live church, the name, the rebranding.
Yeah.
So the decision was there. You sought counsel. You prayed about it, and then you were going to roll it out. But it's messy in the middle. So talk to me about how you were able to rebrand the church and what led you to that decision. Because I think I know a lot of the detail behind it, what led you to it, but what led to the actual name change, and how did you navigate the messy middle?
Yeah, I think that a couple things. One, we're given certain moments in life,
right,
to make certain changes. I hope that's not too obscure. But so as the leader of a church, there's moments in the life cycle of a church, things that can happen that present themselves of like, this could be a good moment to change the name of the church. The former name of our church, it was Community Church. Nothing wrong with that name. It felt a little bit generic at times for us, and we didn't necessarily feel like it said this is like who we are. The reason that I went into ministry in the first place was because when I was working in corporate America, everybody I worked with was just like, man, let's get to happy hour as fast as we can. It's basically like, life sucks. Let's get to happy hour so that we can make it
and escape
at happy hour. And then I can have enough fun at happy hour that I can make it through the rest of the night at home and then go back. And that was life. And I'm like, no, there's a different life. So we say, man, I think we're actually here to live fully alive, even through difficult times. And so when we found ourselves in this moment, when we merged with a church in St. Louis, Destiny Church, we had this moment to change the name of the church. It was certainly to date, probably one of the most complicated things I feel like I've navigated.
Just the decision or the tactical side, or yes and?
Yes and.
Okay.
You love those two words, yes and. Because it's because you said it's so messy. So two things. One, I had to do my best to make people understand the why, which was taking it back to, we're meant to live fully alive, and we just want our church to say that. So we're going to be a live church. It's a yes statement, but it's also a prophetic statement, right? Meaning like, we believe that you can live fully alive. We believe you can be alive. This is a church where you can come alive. We're a live church. Now, even as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about a person who left our church that was a leader in the community and was like, I just don't understand why. And this is how they'll say it. I just don't understand why Michael's doing all this stuff, so I'm out of here. Now, and I wanted to say this, the most important thing to do in the middle, in the messy middle, is to know that you are not doing anything to please people. I don't believe that's only true as a church leader. I believe that's true for you have to know your why. You have to understand your purpose. And if your purpose is pleasing people, your purpose will always be shifting based on the whims of people's emotions.
That's good. That's really good.
And we're like, no, this is what we're supposed to do. And the way I say it, Eric, as long as I please God, I'll please the right people. So that's what I've focused on. So I would just encourage, and again, I know I'm Christian. I know there's people watching that are not Christians. I think these principles, a lot of them certainly still apply. People pleasing will always wear you out and exhaust you, and you will stay stuck in the middle. If you know your purpose, and I would say especially if you know your purpose and you can tie it back to God, it will help you keep moving forward.
That's good. And even with the being in the messy middle, was there ever a time when you were in the midst of, we'll use the Alive brand change, when you were stuck or in the messy middle, where you wanted to retreat back because of some of
all the time,
the haters and the naysayers, I guess, if you will. So you're in the messy middle and you wanted to retreat back because it would have been easier that way.
Correct. So I think this is personality driven to some degree, what I'm about to say, but I think this is important for everybody. If you're going to lead well, you need to have, at least in some level, a love for adventure.
I 100%.
Now, adventure can mean going and hiking a mountain. I think it's awesome. We both, I know, love outdoor adventure. I love to ski. I love to go down a black diamond and hope that I'm going to be able to stop at the bottom. Like, I think that's fun.
Right.
Part of, for me, the loving adventure is what can keep me going when I'm like, this is just hard. I can remember, I don't know if it's 3 weeks, 4 weeks before this name change was going to happen. I said to Megan, I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to do this. It's just so hard.
Right.
But we both know, right? That's actually we talked about indicators earlier. Often a leading indicator that you're supposed to do something is based on the difficulty of it.
Right.
Because success and significance don't belong to the people who take the easy way out.
And what is it? The Duke basketball coach. I know that we've shared that back and forth. Those that succeed in life do hard better.
Do hard better.
Yep. And there has to be a sense of adventure, because in that messy middle, and then as you're like, okay, this is the mission. This is what our why. This is what we're dedicated to. You're in the middle of it. There's still, even once you get to the other part of the other side of the middle, there's still all these unknowns. So how, as a leader, how do you navigate the unknowns?
That's a really hard question. I think that don't. Here's what I was thinking as you said that.
And that wasn't on the question.
But I think I navigate the unknowns by not quitting. And I'll try to make this make sense real fast. I said something about marriage earlier, just because I'm trying to follow what I think God would lead me in this conversation in a moment.
Right.
Most of us quit in the middle. It doesn't matter if it's in our relationships. It doesn't matter if it's in our marriage. It doesn't matter if it's parenting. It doesn't matter if it's business. But if we don't quit in the middle, we actually will experience what the good is on the other side. I think the desire to have to know what to do in the unknown makes us quit. There's a big unknown factor. As I'm sitting here with you right now, we're launching we announced to our church and that we're going to launch a private Christian school in the days ahead. I am in the biggest unknown of my entire life in leadership right now. And I want to quit. Like not leading, but I mean, just this whole, I'm like, it's just hard.
Yeah.
I just want
Leave
to
it
quit.
for someone else.
Right.
Right.
But so what I'm doing in the unknown is not quitting. I'm not trying to know. I can't know what to do in this middle, but what I can do is keep going.
Yep.
I'm just going to keep going because I know that if I don't quit, I have enough experience. If I don't quit, it's going to end up in the right space.
Right.
So I would encourage everybody when you're in that unknown, man, just, it's okay to embrace it.
Right. And I even think some of the definitions that you see of success is being able to navigate failure after failure after failure and just not quitting. And so even if you just replace that with take failure out and then being able to navigate the unknown after the unknown, because once you get to the part to where you know, part of marrying the mission and not the model is like, well, there's always has to be an unknown if you're truly leading in the right direction, or you become stagnant or stale.
100%. So here's the thing. We're trying to lead organizations, not for today, but for tomorrow.
Right.
And I think so often we begin to think about, how do I need to change my organization? How do I need to change my church for the current culture? I'm not trying to change my church for the current culture. I'm trying to make sure that I make changes to our church for what the culture is going to be in 10 years.
That's good.
So there's a Christian prophetic edge, but I also just think leading indicators. You think about what's going on in business and you talk about what's going to happen in the economy in 2025. Man, all the Fortune 500 companies, as you and me sit here today, right there, we're counting on a Fed funds cut.
Right.
We're counting on being able to, therefore hire more staff in 2025. They're making decisions today, not based on today, based on what they believe is going to be the case in 1 year.
Right.
So that's how I have to lead my church. I don't know exactly what 10 years looks like, but I can see some things. And so I'm going to try to build my church for 10 years, not for today, but tie it back.
Right.
That's why in the unknown, I'm not quitting, because I don't know 2025 or 2026. But what I do know is there's a generation being raised up right now of young people that are not following God, that are not learning some of the things me and you learned. And I want to know that I'm going to put something in place that's going to be there.
That's good, man. And even as if you're listening, you're running a business, nonprofit, whatever, or you're just leading somewhere in the middle of both of those, I think to what I have learned, even from this is really good conversation, is that the fact of the matter is you have to have the bigger vision.
Right.
And that's where I try to say it is like, you don't have to have the fine detail of the painting, but if you just throw some stuff on the wall, what's your inclination, what you're writing about, what you're praying about, what you're seeing. And it's taken me a long time to even say that. I know you're a visionary too, but what you see, throw the colors on there and throughout the years, add the fine detail. And you don't have to have all the detail right in the messy middle, but you have to have the direction. And that's one thing that I do admire about you is, yes, you're a senior pastor, you're an entrepreneur. Like the way that you look at the coffee shop, all of that stuff, you lead outside of the box. And I know depending on which book you read, lead in the box or lead outside of the box. How are you able to navigate just all of it? Being a senior pastor, an entrepreneur, like not owner, but technically CEO,
right,
of a coffee shop, a church, a dream center, and still being a great dad and still being a great husband. How are you able to navigate all that?
Yeah. So,
which will lead me to my last question.
Yeah. Without trying again to simplify it, there's scripture that says, don't worry about tomorrow because today has enough trouble of its own.
Right.
And I am the most successful when I do that, because I do not know what tomorrow will bring, but I know how to win today. Mark Batterson, he's one of my favorite authors, and he wrote a book called Win the Day. And I teach our team, win what's important today. And so how do I do that? I win what's important today. So, and which you mentioned this earlier, I can't do any of this without a team around me. And I know that, I've got, dozens of staff that are around me, Megan, and even my older kids that just help make life, function. Incredible friends. I mean, you help me and others in this processing, but I have to be able to win what is important today. And so that's how I would, in the simplest form, that's how I would say I do that. Get people to cover your blind spots, put people in place that enjoy doing the things that you don't enjoy doing.
Yep.
And keep going.
Yep. Don't quit.
I think about that how do you keep managing all this stuff? People that are not wired like me, they're going to say, hey, you don't need to go do this. You don't need to go do a school. You don't need to go start a
why can't you just be okay with what you're doing?
Right. And I'm like, that's not what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
That somebody is supposed to lead this thing that I started with my oversight.
Right.
Because that's what their calling is. But we end up not actually helping as many people as we can help if I try to settle into somebody else's vision for my life, if I settle into somebody else's dream for my life. Because everybody that's a leader, let me promise you, anybody who looks to you for leadership will begin to want to take their own dream and make it your dream, or they'll want to take your dream and make it their dream.
Yep.
And meaning pull what's supposed to happen right out of you and say, this is how you should do it. And I know this is one of the questions we're going to maybe hit on today. So to tie it into what you just asked, when I see the word balance, I chuckle. I just think it's a dumb word.
Yep.
If that's offensive to anybody,
scheme. I think it's a Ponzi scheme.
There's just no such thing.
Right.
Everything affects everything. You do a great job. I'm always encouraged by you because of your ability to go home and leave. I know you have some specific things you do to leave a topic from work. You leave it in the garage or you leave it from going in so you can be fully present as dad and as husband, which is awesome. At the end of the day, I'm always Pastor Michael. I'm always Megan's husband. I'm always my 5 kids' dad.
Yep.
It doesn't matter if I'm at home. It doesn't matter right now as I'm sitting here doing this, if I'm at the grocery store, if I'm at the golf, I'm always functioning in those 3 roles. And so there is no quote unquote balance. That's my life, but I'm all in.
Yep.
And that's where I find life.
And I think that's what inspires me a lot with, even just with you. You're all in, and you think that a lot of the adventures, and I know Enneagram number 7.
That's right.
We
love
bad
adventure.
raps, depending on this is going to be great, and then when you get there, you're like, oh, this is sometimes harder. Yeah. So as we close, we got a couple minutes left. The 2 questions that I ask everybody that's on the show: Michael, what does success look like to you, and what does significance mean to you?
Yeah, success looks like this to me: to fulfill what I know God's purpose for my life is. I'm going to give you 3. Success for me is to fulfill God's purpose for my life, to be married to Megan until one of us dies, and for my kids to love me and have a relationship with me all of our lives.
Yep.
What was the second question?
What is significance? Which that kind of incorporated it all together.
Yeah.
But what does significance mean to you?
Man, it's so close to the same. And so I'll just, I guess, add a word to it, but it's using those things, I guess, for best impact. I was thinking earlier, what I feel I'm 43 years old at the time of this recording. Significance is the long game.
That's good.
It's not an overnight success. It's not an overnight success story. Yep. It's not an overnight significance. It's that, man, I want to finish the race well. I want, when I'm 65 years old, I want people to be able to look at my life and be like, he didn't have, he was a man of integrity. He didn't have a moral failure. He didn't run his, it's a church, but still it's an organization. He didn't run his organization into the ground.
Right.
It's better when he left it than when he started with it, because I played the long game, and I played the long game well.
That's so good. Well, Michael, I appreciate you. This will not be the last time. I think we have a couple other ideas depending on which one can do it. Who can do the idea first. But either way, it doesn't matter. I appreciate you. I love you.
Love you too,
I appreciate the influence. I appreciate you coming on the podcast. And so I hope today that you all feel encouraged. And like always, at the end of these podcasts, if you can hit the subscribe button, I would greatly appreciate it. And until next time, keep fighting for success so that you can pour out significance. We'll talk soon. Thanks, guys.